The NHL newsreel continues to fire at rapid pace, meaning moves to be had in the fantasy hockey game, and another jam-packed episode of your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey breakdowns, NHL news, and betting NHL analysis. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Tuesday edition, injuries to Marchenko, moves around the league impacting your squad. We'll break it all down and more. And let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fantasy GMs, hockey heads, and degenerate gamblers, welcome back inside the lab to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, where I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele, wrote in on this side of the microphone. It's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, here for the Tuesday edition of your daily 30-minute source, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And Steele, there is no shortage of topics to get to on today's episode. We always try and get you guys in and out in 30 minutes with, of course, bets at the end of every single show. Today's going to be a little tricky, but there's a lot going on, Steele, and there are also some injuries here that you and I are going to talk about. We're going to get to these trades. It's been a couple of days, but there's lots to unpack, and there are impacts across the board for fantasy squads. By the way, shout out to the everydayers making us their first listen every single day. We see you, appreciate you, and we also got to give that love to FanDuel Sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where new customers bet $5 and win, get 200 back in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel today to get started. Over to you, though. We'll get to the trade breakdowns. There's lots going on. But this news now, Marchenko, Barzal, this also has a lot of impact on these two teams, Steele. Two teams that were snirking around for a playoff spot. I don't know what word I just used. But let's over to you to maybe use some better ones, because these are two players, especially in Marchenko's case, very fantasy relevant, but also both very critical to their team's offensive success.
Yeah, this Eastern Conference race is tight. Like we all know, a bunch of teams within 4 to 5 points of each other. The wild card race is going to come down to the last game of the season, in my feeling. And this is very tough, a tough spot for the Islanders and the Columbus Blue Jackets to be in. How aggressive will they be potentially at the trade deadline, being buyers, maybe being sellers in this instance? Again, they're all in the race right now. Barzal injury out indefinitely with a lower body injury, which he seems to have every other week at this point. And it's been a very underwhelming season for him. I mean, only 20 points on the year, 78 shots on net, 24 hits, 24 blocks. He's been pretty insignificant for a guy who was supposed to be the franchise star, the franchise player for the New York Islanders. And that just has not been the case for them. They've been winning games, very recently. But for his fantasy value itself, he's been one of those guys that has been borderline droppable, potentially even just drop him at this point. If he is out indefinitely, he's currently rostered at 69%. He's down 4% just in the last day. So for him specifically, fantasy wise, it's tough to see. He's been pretty bad, playing some poor fantasy wise anyway. And then I think the real problem is with the Columbus Blue Jackets and Kirill Marchenko. Also, no timeline on when he's going to be back, but a broken jaw off an errant puck in the game against the Dallas Stars. They lose probably their best offensive weapon right now. They're already without Sean Monahan. You're going to have to, mix and match these lineups. They're going to have to form some chemistry if you're doing so. So Dean Evason has a lot on his plate right now in Columbus. Those are significant injuries, especially for fantasy hockey as we're getting down to the playoffs.
I don't see how both of these teams maneuver this without taking a hit.
Yeah.
They're just also, I know Columbus has been up there offensively this season, but especially the New York Islanders cannot afford to lose any elite offensive punch. And actually, I got to somewhat disagree with you on the Barzal take, only since he's returned from injury of late. To start the season, for sure, and overall, probably you can still make that case for disappointment for fantasy, but in his last 14 games, 13 points. So he has been getting there, and I think the injury factor has really slowed this guy down. But I'm here on the expectations, considering his talent level. I can still definitely see that drop button being pressed at some point this season with you. So I'm not going to fully disagree. I guess if I'm looking at both of these situations, this is going to be tough for fantasy GMs here to maneuver. So I look at it as Kent Johnson. Let's start with Columbus here first in terms of where I'm going to see a little value. Kent Johnson's going to slide up to that top right wing position and play with Fantilli and Voronkov. But just to kind of pull it full circle, Columbus also lost Dante Fabro. So that's their top pairing D-man this year and their top line right winger for a Columbus team that we know has kind of overachieved a little bit. So I'm looking at Kent Johnson. I see some fantasy value there, but I think a team steal that's actually been really good this season in the Columbus Blue Jackets, especially offensively. This could be really a situation that's tough for them to overcome. I know the Islanders are going to be in tough now because also, I don't know if you know this, maybe we can talk about it some more after the break. They're also dealing with injuries to a bunch of other players, Dobson, Pulock, Varlamov, a bunch of other pieces. So I don't know how this goes, but we'll see for both squads.
Yeah, both teams are in bad. Boone Jenner, Sean Monahan, Chinnikov, Gabranson, all in the IR for the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. And like I said, the front office, the head coaches are going to have a lot on their plate when it comes to the trade deadline. Real quickly, for those injuries we just mentioned, head back to our Monday waiver wire episode to find some of the targets. I did mention Josh Norris as well. He is actually out week to week with a mid-body injury too. So if you're going to go for some Ottawa Senators players, Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, which Flip and I have mentioned over the last week or so, but definitely some waiver wire options from our Monday episode.
And the other thing is, Steele, realistically, at this point in the season, we can analyze this as much as we possibly want. 55 points in 53 games for Kirill Marchenko is going to be really hard to replace. We're talking about fantasy angles here. Yes, you're going to have to stick to the waiver wire, but you're going to have to get a little bit creative and get a little bit lucky. That's just the nature of the fantasy game in any sport. And if you've got players like Marchenko going down real key support pieces for teams that are probably within striking distance, there's only so much you can do, much like there's only so much that these teams can do. However, given this Four Nations wrinkle that we've had thrown into the NHL schedule here, this has been a very tricky fantasy year to maneuver from a schedule point of view. And I think you're actually seeing it here with all of these trades that we're going to get to, because clearly GMs in real world hockey want these rosters finalized as much as possible heading into the March trade deadline. I want to talk about a bunch of different angles that we'll cover. You got anything left on the Barzal Marchenko situation, or should we get to break?
Let's get to break. Let's talk about some of these trades that happened over the weekend. We didn't get a time on our weekends to break it down for one of those emergency pods. We had the waiver wire target, obviously, of course, every single Monday. So we're breaking it down now. 4 trades that we got to get in depth on.
Most definitely. I'm sneezing all over myself here. Apologies for that, my friends. The fantasy hockey game isn't always pretty, and that's definitely the case right now for your boy. Look, I am hype about the next couple of weeks. I am very intrigued to see. This is just, I think, the start of the move, Steele. So we'll break it down. Fantasy impacts, what we think is going to happen. I really do think, though, Kent Johnson, though, to take it all away, to wrap it up with a nice little bow. I look at both situations because even with the New York Islanders, there's nothing really jumping off the page for me in terms of somebody that's going to quote unquote step up or benefit. Whereas I could see Kent Johnson playing on that top line looking real nice. However, we'll talk about a lot more angles impacting your fantasy team right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. No better way to play more exciting bets than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Predicting the first tutty, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. Betting live all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the app today. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5. Get $200 back in bonus bets. It's that easy. FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Flip and I really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave us a 5-star review. We wouldn't mind at all. Helps us out a lot, shows the support and love, and we appreciate everyone tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in our morning. We didn't get the opportunity to break down these trades blockbuster trades that happened over the weekend. So we're making time now on Tuesday's episode.
Yeah.
We're going to go in depth on the big one, obviously, between the New York Rangers and Vancouver, and then we'll break down the smaller ones, if you will, between some other teams in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference. But big trade. It's been looming for a while now. Who is going to get traded, JT Miller or Elias Pettersson? And Miller's the one to see himself traded back to the New York Rangers, where he started his career. So just to break down the trade, the Rangers received JT Miller, Eric Brandstrom, and Jackson Dorrington. And in return, the Canucks received Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a conditional 2025 first-round pick that can be that can change to a 2026 first-round pick because it's top 13 protected. So big trade. The Rangers land their guy that they've been after for a while, it seems like now. What was your initial thoughts on the trade, and how do you think it's going to affect fantasy-wise?
Initial thoughts on the trade were it's about darn time, if you know what I'm saying, because
I know
we're all a little kind of drawn out on this situation. We saw it coming. This is what it comes down to for me with this Rangers team, Steele. And I know Igor Shesterkin's on injured reserve, but when you have a goaltending tandem of John Quick and Igor Shesterkin and a blue line that is still what it is, and the pieces that they have up front and how much we like this team top to bottom, even with all the off-ice stuff, with everything that's gone on, a team that's still lurking, you still have a shot at winning. And now you bring in JT Miller. And I think by far the obvious take is, JT Miller, the Rangers win the deal. Get yourself a piece of JT Miller. You know what I think this actually means? A resurrection perhaps for Mika Zibanejad. And I'm looking at the pressure and the attention coming off this guy who has clearly had some issues, I think, between the ears a little bit with confidence and whatever else going on this year, Steele, because we know this guy can bring 80, 90 points. So I think fantasy-wise, on the ice, this is huge for the Rangers, for sure. They're 7-3-0 in their last 10 and creeping on that last wild card spot, 4 points back. Fantasy-wise, I think this is going to be a rejuvenation for Mika Zibanejad. Right now, I believe they have him playing on JT Miller's wing along with Panarin on that top line. Go get yourself a piece, buy low, Mika Zibanejad. Putting it out there now. That's how I looked at it, Steele, because I think this could be really huge for the New York Rangers from a peripheral value piece. Miller's going to go in there, do his thing, but he's going to fire up the boys in a big way.
Well, you already seem to be correct on this outcome. Mika Zibanejad has 4 points in his last 2 games since being paired up with JT Miller.
Thank you. I didn't even look that up.
Since his return to New York. My initial thoughts on this was, you're right. Absolutely damn time that this trade actually happened. From the actual trade itself, a very underwhelming return, in my opinion, for the Vancouver Canucks.
Sure.
Great. You get a first-round pick, top 13 protected. Philip Hedl, a young centerman who kind of needs a change of scenery as well. I just thought maybe with a player like JT Miller, the caliber that he brings to the table, as well as him being under contract, Vancouver could have got a little bit more. What kind of made me puzzled as well is they just absolutely, flopped that pick right over in their next trade, which happened a couple of hours after, to the Pittsburgh Penguins in return for Drew O'Connor and Marcus Peterson. So that's what kind of stumped me a little bit, was they flipped that trade right after. Pretty much they just got Philip Hedl and Victor Mancini from the Rangers in this deal. Fantasy-wise, though, absolutely love it. I'm a huge JT Miller fan. I actually completed that trade I've been going back and forth with on my buddy I ended up getting JT Miller and Adam Fox and an 8th-round pick for Clayton Keller and a first-round pick. I think it's a fair deal for both teams, especially with the defense category that I have in this particular league that I'm in. JT Miller, already 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists in his first 2 games. I think it's going to be great for him, which we've already seen. He's going to be in a position where he brings that veteran leadership, where guys are actually going to listen. And like you said, it's going to bring a resurgence to Mika Zibanejad, which we've already seen over the last couple of games. And we were just talking about him as being one of those disappointing players on last week's episode.
Yes, we were. And when it comes down to the Vancouver Canucks, if a guy is not named Quinn Hughes, I've got a serious level of fantasy concern with their value moving forward. I've said this now at length, Steele. Vancouver Canucks, I'm calling it. I'm saying it again. A bunch of fugazis, a bunch of overachievers. And this isn't exactly a call out or a knock on the team. They're just not exactly built to win. when you've got all of the off-ice and this again isn't exactly I'm going to hold this against them. When you have all of the off-ice distractions, you have some injuries that have obviously hampered Demko, poor performance from PD. This has all been covered at length. But then you look into the numbers. They're 23rd in the NHL in goals for, tied with the Ottawa Senators with 147 goals scored. And then you take away a guy like Miller, and I know Filipino scored in his debut, and that's a nice little piece to get something out of nothing. I know a lot of Canucks fans are going to say, okay, we'll take it considering how much Miller wanted out, or seemingly that was on the wall, all of that. We don't need to go there anymore. But then you look at their special teams, both outside the top 10, very somewhat average, somewhat ho-hum, exactly what I've been saying about this Canucks team. If it's not Quinn Hughes, this is just a stream, week-to-week situation for these players, in my opinion, Steele, because I see a very tumultuous up and down finish to the season coming for this Canucks team. A little bit easy to say when Miller is the piece going the other way and Hedl is the one coming back. However, I've been saying this anyway, and I know a lot of people are saying this could be a turn the page. I think it's going to be a turn the page and perhaps sink, because other teams around them are making moves as well, and I expect both divisions in the West to continue to be spicy and adding talent. That's my take on that. Over to you, though, for whatever trade you want to go to next. I know you mentioned that Vancouver-Pittsburgh situation. San Jose, Dallas is intriguing. Wherever you want to go, pal, I'm ready to go there, and big-time bets coming up after the break.
I will say this, everybody, circle March 22nd on your calendar. The Vancouver Canucks will be in New York. That will be the first time we see Elias Pettersson versus JT Miller. We'll actually see them against each other in the Four Nations face-off, so that could be very interesting to see some battles between those two now that they're on different teams. Great trade overall. There's nothing really to break down with the Vancouver Canucks-Pittsburgh trade. The San Jose-Dallas trade that happened over the weekend, very interesting. The San Jose Sharks, they get a 2025 first-round pick and a conditional 2025 third-round pick. In return, the Dallas Stars receive Cody Ceci and Mikael Granlund. Also very, stumped on the fact that San Jose got a first-round pick in this instance for those two guys. Right. However, Mikael Granlund is actually very interesting. The Dallas Stars just got Mason Marchment back from his injury. They slide in Granlund on that second line between Matt Duchene and Marchment. So with those three guys going right now and buzzing, fantasy value-wise for both Marchment, I don't know what Marchment is at currently on Yahoo, but Mikael Granlund has a very good opportunity to just, absolutely explode with his fantasy value being on a top 6 forward group. 31 assists, 15 goals so far this season, and he has potential to even do a lot more.
You can't help but feel that that's an angle that is going to happen. Like, is it actually going to pan out like that? This is fantasy hockey. We can think about it all day long. I like it to happen. I like the move. The amount that they paid for him is intriguing. I think Mike Grier deserves a lot of credit in San Jose for what he's doing in the front office there. I was just bringing this up. Mikael Granlund is a UFA after this season. He's on the 4th year of a 4-year, $5 million deal. So the 32-year-old's a little bit of a hired gun here for Jim Nill in the front office. You know how I feel about Jim Nill as well, the Dallas GM. He is always looking to make moves to upgrade his team. And when you have what you have in the Dallas Stars and what just happened there, by the way, with Heiskanen, I think he's probably not even close to done in terms of augmenting his roster. That's my opinion on it, Steele. I don't know what you think about this, though. Let me just bring this up. I don't know where they're going to deploy him on the power play because I'd really like to see that happen. So right now, Granlund's anchoring the second power play unit with Jamie Benn, Marchment, Stankoven. Interesting. I just need to see what happens here, because just because he's swapping into a new team for me doesn't immediately mean that his point production that he's had this season immediately goes. Do I like it to happen? Yes. But I think this Dallas team isn't done augmenting the roster just yet.
Yeah, I don't think they are either. Played his first game with Dallas in that 5-3 win over the Blue Jackets. He had 1 point, 2 shots, 2 hits. Currently rostered at 67% on Yahoo right now. So if he is available, I think there is take a chance on this guy in that top six in Dallas. So, you're right. Sometimes it doesn't transfer over, but for me in this instance, I think it's worth a shot for teams who are looking to maybe fill in those holes from those injuries we just talked about, waiver wire targets. 67% though might be tough to get him in some of those leagues. After the break, We got big time bets, a full board here Tuesday night. Flip and I are getting after it with these big time bets, giving you our locks of the night. All of that and more coming up next. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for all that support. Before we get to big time bets, I know we talked about the Calgary-Philadelphia trade on waiver wire targets Monday's episode. I just want to break down the trade and just maybe get your thoughts initially on what you thought. Joel Farabee going to Calgary, Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, who scored in his debut in Calgary as well. In return, Philadelphia gets Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Pelletier, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2028 seventh-round pick. So I actually really like this deal from both sides. Two guys that have really been up and down and struggled in Philadelphia. They go to Calgary, could make a very big difference like we already talked about on Monday's episode. But I also like the return for Philadelphia. They get a couple of picks. They get some young guys, Jacob Pelletier, who's known to have a really good attitude and be a locker room guy. And then Andrei Kuzmenko, who has struggled since being traded from Vancouver, but again, has potential to hop in that top 6 forward group in Philly and really produce some.
I think this is a trade that to me indicates what these front offices feel like indicative of what they're seeing on the ice is what these moves mean. I think Frost and Farabee offer the Calgary Flames a team that's very much on the bubble there for a playoff spot. Kind of a low risk, high reward situation. And then you've got what the Philadelphia Flyers got in return to kind of perhaps say that this is maybe a bit of a move for the future. And they're looking at that East this year, and it's so stacked up, even though it is tight, that they are realistically, with that goaltending that they have and the blue line that they have, they aren't getting through. Are the Calgary Flames going on a cup run? Probably not. But they have a lot better of a chance. And I think right now this is a much more of a win-now situation move for Craig Conroy in Calgary. Look, Morgan Frost, I get it. Joel Farabee, I get it. They don't exactly jump off the page, but they have been quality NHLers, and this is one of those spots, Steele, that I think I have to separate real-life hockey from fantasy because I'm not so sure that the top-line deployment of Farabee right now is going to stick. I'm not so sure what Morgan Frost is going to do in terms of lighting up the lamp. But I think this is going to make this Calgary Flames team a much more balanced and hard one to deal with up front. That's just my take on it. But for now, much like you were just talking about taking a risk on Granlund, which has much more upside, I like taking a little shot on Farabee, which I talked about yesterday while he's on the top line, and Morgan Frost while he's anchoring that top power play unit, at least how we see it shake out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Some great opportunity for those guys in Calgary, Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee. Former 50-point scorer. Let's get the big time bets. I don't even know how many games are on this board. There might be 12 games 13. On Tuesday, 13 games on the schedule for Tuesday night. We might have to do a 13-leg money line parlay just for the fun of it at the end here. We'll go back and forth after we pick out our 3 favorite picks for Tuesday.
I like it.
Over to you, my friend. Where are you looking at?
To be honest, it was hard to put the blinders on here, Steele. I'm going to fire off.
It was.
I'm going to fire off my picks quickly because I would very much stress caution because also with the 4 nations looming, I think I alluded to this yesterday. 4 nations looming, a little bit of a break here. All the trade madness, this is a really tough stretch to handicap from a betting perspective. So dial it back. Slap a couple of parlays in. First pick that I really like, Columbus, Buffalo over the number. 7 of the last 9 between these two have gone over the number. Even with Marchenko out, I still like what Columbus is able to do offensively. The top line is now Voronkov, Fantilli, and Kent Johnson. I like it. Hit me with the over Colorado, Vancouver. I'm riding with Colorado. I just spoke about, at length about how I feel about the Vancouver Canucks and how actually the Colorado Avalanche have looked really good of late. Boom, bap, Colorado, money line, easy done. Edmonton on the road into St. Louis. Pretty much a 50-50 split between these two over their last 10. 5-3-2 for Edmonton. I'm not backing off the Edmonton Oilers, Steele. In their last 3 against St. Louis, they have points in all 3. Hit me with the Edmonton Oilers on the road here. The last time these two teams played, Edmonton took it 4-2 back in December. I see a very similar outcome. I don't buy into this Blues team, not one iota. And how long have I said that this Edmonton Oilers
A
squad is
while.
going to go on a serious heater in the second half? It's going to get going in a big way. Lock of the night. Oilers, money line on the road, going to get a pretty good odd as well.
I like those two picks you have, especially the Sabres and Oilers. What was the third pick? What was the third pick you had?
Third pick, I sandwiched in there in the middle. I got Avs on the money line on the road against Vancouver.
Yeah, love all three of those picks. I have two of them in variation. I like the over 6.5. I'm going to take the Sabres on the money line against the Blue Jackets at -182 right now. They're 5-4-1 in the last 10. The big factor for me is Columbus is coming off a road trip right now. They're coming back east from out west. This is the last game before they head back home with the Buffalo Sabres. And after losing Kirill Marchenko, it was just icing on the cake for me to make this pick with Sabres on the money line. Second pick, I'm right there with you. Oilers on the money line against the St. Louis Blues at -176 right now. 5-3-2 in the last 10 between these two teams. And then finally, the Red Wings. They're the hottest team right now. They have a 6-game winning streak. Red Wings money line +100 against the Seattle Kraken. They're 3-2-2 in their last 7 against Seattle. I just really like the way Detroit's playing right now. They're actually playing as a team. They're playing hockey. Todd McClellan has done a phenomenal job turning this team back around and getting them in the playoff race. So those are my 3 favorite picks for Tuesday night. Sabres, Oilers, Red Wings, all money line picks.
Cannot deny Todd McClellan's impact on this Detroit Red Wings team, Steele. It's going to be a bloodbath in the Eastern Conference. A lot of sayings that get thrown out on this show. One of them is a good team is going to be left on the cutting room floor. There's going to be like 4 good teams, I think, in the Eastern Conference. Very excited to get to it. We're going to have some intriguing top 10 fantasy breakdowns, a couple of special guests coming up while the Four Nations is in full tilt. Steele and I got to talk about the Four Nations a little bit, maybe throw a few bets at the board. Let's get after it, Steele. We got another big week of fantasy hockey coming up.
Real quick before we wrap things up, I am just going to spitball all the matchups for Tuesday night. You're going to tell me your favorite pick, just money line, which team you're going with. Here we go. We're creating the 13-leg money line parlay. First game of the night. It's probably the toughest one. Panthers versus Capitals. Who are you taking?
I'm going to take the Panthers there. Maybe even take them on the puck line +1.5. Just for the juice, just on the gut pick. I like what the Florida Panthers have been doing, but if I'm going to take something, I'd probably go to the 6.5 and take the under.
Taking the Panthers on the money line. Next game, Wild and Bruins.
You just mentioned to me how good the Minnesota Wild have been on the road. However, I like the mojo running through the Boston Bruins here at home as well. Past the cooking, hit me with the Bruins on the money line at home.
I'm going to agree with you there. I'm taking the Bruins as well. Lightning and Senators.
Senators have really impressed me over the last little while, but Amalie Arena is a fortress, and they are still a young team that I think are going to have a hiccup or two. Why not on the road into Tampa as a hiccup? Hit me with the Lightning at home on the money line there.
Agree with you there. Sabres and Blue Jackets. I think we both take the Sabres in this instance.
Yes, sir.
To the next game, Devils, Penguins. Who are you taking?
I'm going to go with Sidney Crosby at home for the spice. When Crosby goes, the Penguins go, and I know that's going to be an underdog pick, but the Devils have been up and down. The Devils have been inconsistent, and I know the Penguins aren't exactly jumping off the page, but when Sid scores 4 straight games, I'm going to pay attention to the Pens.
Golden Knights versus Islanders.
Very, very tough. I know the injuries would make you want to initially stay away from the Islanders, so that's probably where I'm going to go. They are banged up now on the blue line as well. Hit me with Vegas on the road. Vegas is a very good team.
You and I are on the same page for all these picks. We're both taking the Oilers on the money line. You got Jets and Hurricanes. This is a tough one too.
Under again. I would put that one at under. I'd take it to 6.5 if I had to. I'm going to go with the Jets at home. The Jets just pulled off a big W against Washington over the weekend. I'll go with the Jets at home.
Flyers and the Hockey Club from Utah.
I'm going to go Flyers. This is a hand grenade game that I would probably stay away from. Of all the ones you just reamed off to me, I find that one the toughest to handicap. Give me the Flyers, but very, very slightly. That's a coin flip game for me. Stay away.
Maple Leafs and Flames. Of course, we got to go with the Leafs in this instance.
Let's keep it simple. Yep.
Red Wings and Kraken. We're going Red Wings because that's my pick. You pick the Avalanche on the money line.
Yes, sir.
We got Sharks and Canadians.
Let's go with the Sharks. This is a close one again. Montreal has been playing very good hockey, but I think this is a mojo-type situation. There's been a bit of a shakeup in that young San Jose dressing room, but Mikael Granlund wasn't a part of the future. and they would have known this, especially as a UFA. So I don't think this is one of those, oh, the room has changed. If anything, this might reinvigorate this young team. Another good little batch of future prospects coming in soon. Sharks on the money line at home, and it's got to be Dallas going up against the Anaheim Ducks to round that one out, Steele. Lots of good going on in Dallas right now.
Lots of good things. There's actually 14 games on the schedule for Tuesday night. $10 on this parlay. That pays out to over 40 grand. $10 into 40 grand. We're doing it just for fun.
Now is the time.
Now is the time. Now is the time to place your bets. That is the 14-leg parlay for Tuesday night. Let us know your favorite picks and what you would change, as well as what you thought about the trades from this past weekend. Thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod, making it your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your fantasy weekly matchups, your big-time bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.